Hello there, people of the internet. So I've been asked this not near as many times as I was expecting at this point, but I still figured it'd make a really cool video to go ahead and get done. People typically, like your newer gun owners, this was more so like during the splurge of 2020 where we had a bunch of new gun owners starting to pop up all over the place. They were confused as to what the difference was between forged metal, cast metal, milled metals, and stamped metals, and what, you know, the pros and cons of each are with each in particular firearm. So I figured I'd go ahead and just throw a video out there talking about these different procedures. They're all about like how different things on a firearm are made. We'll talk about basically all the basics behind each, you know, what you can expect from each, etc., etc. All right, I figure we'll go ahead and start off with the very simplest of molding materials, creating materials. This right here is a high tower, high point carbine chambered in 45 ACP. For any YouTube reviewers, this is a 10-round magazine. This might look like a scary black rifle, but I assure you this is just a 10-round magazine. This thing's only semi-automatic. It's not as scary as people make it out to be. But the receiver and the bolt in this thing are made of cast metal. What that means is there is some sort of stencil or cavity, whatever it is that you feel like calling it, that is filled with a molten metal in the shape of whatever piece of metal it is that they are looking to create. And in this particular case, it is the box receiver. It is the receiver of the firearm that actually makes the firearm itself. I'm trying to explain this in such a way to where somebody who doesn't necessarily know about firearms can possibly understand. But the metal is basically molten. It's a liquid, and it is poured into a chamber that is in the shape of whatever it is that they are wanting to create. That is the easiest, cheapest, simplest way to make whatever shape it is that you're wanting to make. Unfortunately, it is also the weakest. When you cast metal like that, you oftentimes get porous metal, metal that is not well fastened together. You just get metal that is not ideal for making anything that will be used under pressure or things like that. The reason why people cast things for firearms is simply because casting metal is a lot easier than the other types of methods used to create whatever it is that you're creating for said firearms. Casting metal is typically used for cheaper firearms. They're used to keep the prices down on these cheaper firearms. Whenever you just cast things, it takes a lot less man hours. It takes a lot less effort. It takes it's very simple and easy to cast something in comparison to the other methods that we're going to be talking about. Whenever you're casting whatever it is that you're wanting to cast, very literally all you need is a mold or something, and you pour molten metal in it, and you wait for that to, you know, harden, cool off. You just basically pour it and wait, and then after that you pull out your whatever it is that you just molded, and bam, you now have yourself one of those. Not very effective, not very strong, but boy is it cheap and is it quick. Whenever you're casting materials like that, if you're casting materials for like a low pressure round, like any sort of legitimate handgun round, or any kind of surface that is non-pressure bearing, like a non-locking surface or anything like that, you're allowed to get away with casting with cheaper metals or softer metals or anything like that. Even whenever you're casting with harder metals, it's still not near as effective or strong as some of the other means of creation. Let's go ahead and talk about the next not that strong mean of creation, but it is definitely better than casting in my opinion. YouTube reviewers, this is a 10-round magazine, not a 30-round magazine. As you can see, it's been circumcised and very much tinier. This right here is my Romanian RH-10. This right here is a stamped receiver AKM model. Whenever you have anything that is, you know, stamped, it's basically a flat piece of metal that has been bent into whatever shape it is that you're wanting to bend it in. The AKs are a very, very good example of that, because that is basically what they were intended to be created to be able to do. Russia wanted a good, cheap way to make very effective rifles without needing to put a lot of time or effort into them. Originally, the AKs were supposed to be stamped. They had some trouble figuring it out. They went to milled. We'll talk about milled here in a second. But eventually they did figure out the stamped receivers on the AK, and that made making the AKs very, very simple. All it is a very thin piece of metal that's been bent into whatever shape it is that they're wanting to bend it in. Typically, your stamping is not anything that is going to be pressure bearing. Like on the AK, the main pressure bearing surface is the front trunnion up here. A lot of times those are milled. A lot of times they are forged, but a lot of times they are cast, and cast trunnions just cannot withstand the pressure that the AK-47 outputs. So your cast trunnions do wear way, way, way quicker than your other options do. Because of the thickness of the metal in the trunnion and the thickness of everywhere else on the gun, stamped sheet metal can only be used in like really thin spots like the receiver over here. Stamping sheet metal, get off me. Stamping sheet metal is one of the easier ways to go because you don't even need a mold. You just have to bend the metal in whatever direction it is that you're bending. Nowadays, it's done very... Nowadays, it's basically got what would be the equivalency of a mold to be able to bend the sheet metal around whatever surface it is that they're wanting to bend it around, just to make things as easy as possible. Everything is then, you know, riveted and stabilizing, reinforcing... What would you call them? Rivets? I guess we're going to call them rivets, are done on the inside of the receiver to go ahead and strengthen it, to make sure that there's no warping or bending or anything like that. That was one of the main issues that the main stamped sheet metal AK-47s had, because it's just thin sheet metal that's been bent into whatever shape it is that they want. Alright, now let's talk about milling and forging. These are by far the two best methods. Milling, what you do is you start off with a block of metal, and then using like various cutting tools and whatnot, you will actually cut out whatever shape it is that you want. Most of the time, well, we're just gonna like talk about receivers. You'd cut out the shape of that receiver, and then you would have that receiver cut out from this block of metal, whatever metal it is that you decide to use. And doing that is much, much stronger than casting it, and it is much thicker than just using stamped sheet metal. So it's a much stronger, more capable material than the other two options. Milling is the most common because it is the best way, that is also the cheapest way. Whenever you are talking about wanting something that is strong and capable, milling is the easiest way to achieve what it is that you're wanting to achieve. Then there's forging. Forging is like the strongest way to make an incredibly durable material. Whenever you forge something, you basically take your block of metal and you either heat it up, or there's, you know, various different processes to be able to mold this metal, and you hammer that metal into whatever shape it is that you're wanting to, you know, have. And upon doing so, the compression of the metal and the different kinds of heat treating and the different things that are done whenever you hammer metal into whatever shape it is that you're wanting to, you know, utilize it in, it makes the metal extremely strong, especially with the modern practices that we have nowadays. Whenever you hear something like a cold hammer forged whatever the hell, that is what that means. It means it's been hammered into whatever shape it is that they're wanting it to be in. And as a result, the metal is incredibly strong and incredibly durable. So if you're buying something that is either milled or cold hammer forged, it is going to be extremely good at in terms of durability. Maybe not reliability. I mean, there's some companies out there who have questionable reliability, but that's not really what we're getting into. Hopefully that right there was enough of an indication to really clear up some of these different ideas and some of these different things to look at whenever you're looking to buy yourself whatever piece of equipment it is that you're looking to buy. If you're on a budget and you're getting something that's been cast, make sure you do some research on that and make sure it's actually safe to use. There's plenty of cast items out there that have been deemed not so safe. Or if you're getting something stamped, make sure it's by a company who knows how to do what it is that they're doing. If you're getting yourself something milled, or if you're getting yourself something forged, odds are it's going to be a little bit more pricey than the stamped or the cast, but it's going to be something that is going to last you a very, very long time. Alright, hopefully that cleared it up. Maybe you people learned something, or if you're watching this, you probably already knew all of what it is that I was going to be saying here. But this video is more or less, you know, so I have a means to go ahead and send to people who ask me about this type of stuff. There's all sorts of different topics that I get asked nowadays, and I have to really be on my game with my basis of knowledge, but also like the composition and the reasoning and rationale as to why it is that they were made the way that they are. And it's just opened my eyes to so many different possibilities. I am honestly very much a fan of everything that it is that I am being made to learn and do, and hopefully you guys learned something here as well. Alright, well, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for watching. Subscribe to the channel, like the video. Description down below has a link to all sorts of different things. You guys go off, have yourself a fantastic day. Oh God, I just saw this in the dirt. My goodness. My shell casings that I have out here have been out here for a very long time. This is a very good example of that. I can't even tell what this is. I believe it's a rimmed cartridge, just because back here is bulged down a little bit. Oh, but here, let me find one that's not so bad. Yeah, here we go. This right here is one that is beginning to deteriorate. Your steel does not hold up very well in the elements out here, and this right here is a very good example of exactly that. This is to the point where it's starting to not even look like a cartridge case anymore. Alright, I just kind of nerded out there for a second. Thanks for watching, folks. You have a fantastic day. Been a little while since I've done this. Bonnie and Clyde be damned. The poor man's Garen. It's a shame that bolt-action shotguns aren't more mainstream.